Team, I don't want to divert us to get too far into the conversation about the failure of our school system in this country, public school system. But just if we can take a breather, this was amazing. There's a poll circulating right now from the Morning Consult. They did a test with people, just Americans, just a sample size of Americans. Producer Mark, I gotta ask you a question here, okay? Because I didn't send you this one in the rundown note. What percentage of Americans, shown a map of the world, can find Iran on a map?
Oh. It's got to be like 40-ish%. Is that too high?
A fair guess. 23%. Wow. Less than 1 in 4. 3 out of 4 people cannot find Iran on a map. Now, hold on a second. Now, people are going to say, all right, let's not be too, geography's not everybody's thing, whatever. Here's the problem. And I don't have a specific number for this, but they showed where people, they let them sort of put a virtual pin on where they thought Iran was. This is where I've got a real problem. It's actually not, you can't find Iran. People are used to seeing maps with the names on them. It can be a little, how many journos could find Poland on a map if it was just a map of the world with no names on it? I'd say not very many.
Not many,
if you start to be honest about this, like all of us get used to seeing maps with the names on them, and then we find things if it's just a blank map. But here's where I draw the line. A lot of people in this test thought that Iran was in America.
Oh, my God.
Which is the best. That's my favorite. Like, I don't care who you are. You don't have to care about foreign relations. You have to be super educated, whatever. You do, however, have to know where the country is that you live in on a map. And you have to know that Iran is not, in fact, in that geographic space.
How many people do you think can get all 50 states where they are?
Look,
I don't think I could.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think I'd get there, but it wouldn't, you start looking at what's really the difference between some of those
states in the middle,
Dakotas and Montana? You start to look at some of those states, all of a sudden Nevada starts to feel a little bit more like Utah, it can, we're also highfalutin, also fancy about our geography. But I do draw the line. You have to know.
You should at least know Iran is in the Middle East.
Yeah, we have to know that Iran is not in America. That you do have to know.
Yes.
That is an expectation that I think. So, they always do these things like how many Americans they name the vice president, whatever. And I say to that, you should know that, obviously, but does it really matter? Probably not. But you got to know Iran's not in America. That's the thing that is real. Speaking of things that are real and things that are fake, I thought that this was a very interesting moment. There was a letter that was circulated, and the journalists were all just saying, "Oh, we have this letter about how the U.S. is pulling out of Iraq." It turned out the letter was a draft, and it was never meant to be released. But the journalists went with it anyway. I just want to know. Yeah, it seems like there was a mistake made by the Pentagon, the Defense Department, or this letter never should have seen the light of day. But journalists are supposed to be able to determine what's, they're supposed to tell us what's real and what's not. They're not supposed to just they're not supposed to dossier things. Remember the Steele dossier? By the way, Steele is now doing events. And now that Chris Steele has no longer has any real use because his dossier is crap and all the actual DOJ reporting that's out there from the Inspector General and elsewhere, the Christopher Steele dossier is garbage. We know that now. Now he gets to just sort of be a celebrity to the left because he did what he needed to do for them. He served his purpose. This is one of the major advantages that Democrats and leftists and socialists have over us conservatives here in America. That if you take one for the team on the left, if you are of use to them and you are a good little leftist functionary, there are book deals and contributorships and speaking gigs and all the greatest stuff you could get. They take care of their own. On our side, it's always, not a lot of places for conservatives, so, maybe you could open a small business or something. It's like you're on your own. I mean, nobody really goes out of their way to help you. And I'm telling you, it's not a minor thing. It really does matter. There's a reason why not to compare everybody to the mafia here, but there's a reason why the mafia would always approach, would try to take care of your family if you went to prison. It's to buy your silence when you're in prison, and that becomes the expectation. You don't blab. And of course, people do blab, but it's supposed to be you don't blab, and we'll take care of your family. In this case, the left kind of has its omerta. Isn't that what producer Mark, right? The oath of allegiance to the Cosa Nostra, right? Yeah, I know these things. I used to watch that. I have actually somebody who has I always find it a little bit annoying that there are so many of these movies about mobsters where you're supposed to be sympathetic to the mobsters. This is a big problem I have. The mobsters will do bad things, but they'll never do something or the one that you're supposed to like, the one you're supposed to root for, never does the thing that's so bad, really, that you can't root for them really anymore. And real-life mobsters do the really bad things, actually.
Like the show, was it Bad Blood that you recommended on Netflix? I ended up watching that, and you want to root for the guys, but they're terrible people.
They're terrible people.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the first season of that was pretty watchable, I thought.
Yes.
The second season...
I learned that the second season deviates from the true story.
Correct.
They go out on their own.
They just make it up as they go.
Yeah.
The first season was based on what actually happened in Montreal. I was just shocked that, Montreal even had mobsters, where they weren't just hey, we'll have a snowball fight, I thought that apparently there's, real, mobsters there. The Rizzuto family, in fact.
Any relation to...
I don't think so. But I'll just say this. First season, that was pretty good. Second season, it wasn't. But you see this also in, I'm watching even The Americans, which is a very good show. There are a few things where real KGB operatives would have done the very bad thing, and they end up not doing the very bad thing because obviously then you can't look. I get it, you got to suspend disbelief and whatever. But with mobsters, it's always they have this code, and they don't. No, the mobsters go in and break the guy's fingers in front of his wife because he won't pay the protection money, and that's what they all did. They're not good people. So I break with a lot of people. I'm yeah, I love all these Scorsese movies. I'm no, these are very talk to Giuliani as I have about the mobsters that he used to prosecute. These are guys that do very bad things.
I mean, they're good movies.
No, they're entertaining movies, but I just think that they're
terrible people. Yeah.
They're terrible people.
Yeah.
And they always do this thing. Tony Soprano, for example. He's kind of a good guy. He's like an anti-hero, but he's a bad guy, but he's kind of a good guy. It's no, they're really just bad guys.
Yes.
This is where I know no one wants to hear this because everyone loves their honorable bad guy movies. The honorable mobster that breaks the law but isn't a terrible guy. They're usually
only slightly good people for entertainment value.
What? Well, no, they're slightly good people for entertainment value because if they weren't slightly good people, then you couldn't want anything good. You couldn't root for them anymore.
Yes.
Then why are you watching this?
Exactly.
Then you want the FBI to come in through the front door and take him out to the prison cell, obviously. I'm sorry, I got distracted here from what I was going to go to, which is now the how the Democrats, they said all these things, and now we should assess what they said because they were wrong. Oh, I talked to you before about how John Kerry was not a very impressive person. And here is John Kerry being unimpressive. Play clip 4, please.
And now we're seeing the repercussions of going back to where we were when we began the process of trying to eliminate a nuclear weapon. I think it's a tragedy for the world that instead of diplomacy, this administration has rushed to confrontation. And if this develops into a tit-for-tat, increased effort, it will become a war that is needless, it didn't have to happen, and it will be a reckless war of choice by the President of the United States.
Thanks for all that, John Kerry. Meanwhile, the president has ratcheted up what it means to confront America. The Obama administration kept making it seem easier and easier. Remember, red line in Syria? Didn't enforce it. Shut down an operation against Hezbollah drug running because it might have upset the mullahs. The entire foreign policy of the United States in the Middle East became dominated during the Obama administration, became dominated by a desire to get a deal so that the Democrats could look like they have something to show for 8 years of their control over our foreign policy. Remember, we hear so much about how Trump did something in Ukraine. But whatever happened to the whole, I'm confused. Wasn't Trump supposed to be such a threat to national security? They had to rush the articles of impeachment through because he was going to cheat in the election, and we had to know about this right away, and it was all such an urgent thing. And now all of a sudden there's just so much Much quiet about that. Isn't that so weird? Almost like they were just being deeply cynical the whole time, and it had nothing to do with anything, really. Huh. Well, it had a lot to do with the Democrats getting what they need for themselves, trying to achieve power. They complained constantly then about how Trump was doing something for his own personal benefit, and that was the big, personal benefit in Ukraine. It was very specifically for the benefit of the Obama administration and really for Obama's legacy. And by the way, I think that personal benefit stuff is crap in the way that they're using it. But the Obama administration, I mean, Obama was trying to buy, with cash, like actually buy a foreign policy legacy for his administration in the Middle East and therefore in foreign policy in general. And yeah, failed. Or at least is beginning to fail. And that's what's part of the reason that the libs are so upset about this whole thing. It's because they understand that it's more than just a problem of Trump here for them. It's also the problem of how does this look for Obama? The foundational concept of Obama's approach to Iran and on foreign policy more broadly, but on Iran was we have to do something. We have to get a deal with them because deterrence and punishment will not work with Iran. What happens if they took that approach and now we see with Trump, hold on a second, deterrence, as in, if you kill our people, we're going to kill you, deterrence can work. So was it a good idea to give them all that money and all that economic reintegration into the global economy, the global financial system? Was that a good idea? There's a risk here. There's a risk here, not just for Obama's legacy, but for the future political prospects of the Democratic Party. That's also something you have to remember, right? 2020 now looms large over all of the Democrat media coverage, over all of the LibJourno narrative building out there. Trump understands that, too. Did we play 26 yet? I don't think we did. Let's play it, my friend. This is from his speech this morning.
The United States will immediately impose additional punishing economic sanctions on the Iranian regime. These powerful sanctions will remain until Iran changes its behavior. In recent months alone, Iran has seized ships in international waters, fired an unprovoked strike on Saudi Arabia, and shot down 2 U.S. drones. Iran's hostilities substantially increased after the foolish Iran nuclear deal was signed in 2013, and they were given $150 billion, not to mention $1.8 billion in cash. Instead of saying thank you to the United States, they chanted death to America. In fact, they chanted death to America the day the agreement was signed. Then Iran went on a terror spree, funded by the money from the deal, and created hell in Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Afghanistan, and Iraq. The missiles fired last night at us and our allies were paid for with the funds made available by the last administration.
They hate it when Trump points all that out. What did we get exactly for all of that money, all of that? Those were concessions. We made concessions to Iran. What was the concession the Iranians made? They keep everything they have, and then they open some of it to nuclear inspectors? Ooh, so painful. How could the Iranian regime ever concede to such difficult circumstances? This is the truth, folks. The Obama administration was a team of deeply unserious thinkers on foreign policy and national security matters. That is just the reality. They can try to spin it as many ways as they want. Ben Rhodes, for heaven's sakes, this guy was the great communicator of Obama's national security strategy. This should be a reminder that the journalists did not do their job in the last administration, unless their job was to carry water for Obama and all of his people, which then they certainly did it. So I don't have a whole lot to give you here except just an update on this this Boeing plane that crashed shortly after it took off from Tehran Airport, and it killed all 176 people on board. There were a lot of 63 Canadians, 11 Ukrainians died in the crash. You had a newlywed couple that just got married in Iran. I mean, terrible, terrible situation. It just went down, and you have, I believe, there's been a suspension of all flights from Ukraine to Tehran right now. This is a Boeing 737-800. As you know, the Boeing is under a lot of pressure these days because of the problems with the 737 MAX, where there were 2 crashes back in March that killed 346 people. But this is the predecessor plane to the 737 MAX. So it's not a 737 MAX problem, obviously, because it's not the plane. The Ukrainian embassy replaced a previous statement saying terrorism or rocket attacks have been ruled out as a cause of the flight crash. Quote, information on the causes of the plane crash is being clarified by the commission, the Ukrainian embassy said. So they pulled back an initial statement on that. Look, this is where you got to look at this and say it's possible that this was a tragic coincidence. The same night you got all these missiles being fired from Iran into Iraq. You have a plane right after takeoff destroyed. I mean, it crashed, destroyed. I think there were also some early reports of initial double engine failure. But even if there was a double engine failure, usually a plane has enough lift and momentum to try and ride it out on its wings and it's a crash landing, but at least it's not just falling out of the sky like a stone, and then the plane just blows up effectively. But this is clearly going to get a lot of people's attention, and it should. I mean, a large loss of life here. They have the black box recorder. A lot of conspiracies out there about what this was, what happened here. It seems highly, I just say it seems highly suspicious to me. It should seem highly suspicious to anyone that the night of all the missiles getting fired from Iran, you have a plane that everyone on board is killed, and it's just the charred wreckage of it. There are photos of it near the Iranian airport. This just happened. It just happened. It's very, airline disasters are increasingly rare. We know that there was, for example, that Malaysian Airlines flight that was blown out of the sky over Ukraine by a Russian-provided, Russian-backed militia, Russian-provided missile system that the Russian-backed militia used in eastern Ukraine. Shot it. There's audio of it, too. They shot it out of the sky. We don't know what happened here, but it's highly suspicious until we do know.
It'd be hard to believe that Donald Trump would launch attacks into Iran without speaking first to Vladimir Putin, considering that he's deferred to the Russian president on Syria. He's deferred to the Russian president on removing troops from that area. He's deferred to the Russian president on Ukraine. He's deferred to the Russian president on most geopolitical questions.
Never wrong. That's the great part about being on MSNBC. You never have to admit you're wrong or that you're an idiot. Oh yeah, because everything is Putin's bidding. I mean, these people, the newfound Russianists of our media. I'm telling you, all you really have to know with some of these people is, have they personally benefited from the Trump administration professionally? Have they benefited personally in their professional role because of Trump or not? Many of them are spiteful toward Trump because they feel like Joe Scarborough, spiteful toward Trump, and that then infects everything they say, all their analysis, all the presentation of facts. The job that they're supposed to do is secondary to Orange Man bad because I'm not benefiting from Orange Man. And that's what you see from Scarborough. You see that with many, many other people these days who, all along actually in the administration, this has been the case. You have all these people who just refuse to try and present things the way that they should if they weren't doing it for their own personal purposes. But I have a little update for you on something. You remember back when Covington Catholic students were presented as being aggressive racists? And we have to remember, why was that so compelling a story for the media? Because they believe, I think, and I don't know how much of it is they pander to their audiences because they know their idiot liberal audiences believe this stuff, but they just really believe that the bad guys, the people you always want to attack whenever you can, if you're in a mainstream news media organization, with obviously the exception of Fox News and a few other places, but if you're in a liberal media organization, which is really everything these days other than Fox News in the news sense, yes, I know One America and Newsmax, there are a couple others, but their audiences, I mean, more people listen to this show than watch either of those channels every day. So, but they take any opportunity they can to attack white males who support Trump. I mean, if you're a white male Trump supporter, you are not just fair game, you are an irresistible target for the media's ire. They do not like you. They want to make you look bad. They want to be harmful to you if they can, because they think that that's how their side, the libs, that's how they score points. And so that was why they, without doing any journalistic due diligence, without taking any moment of, wait, hold on a second, are we going to get this right? They jumped on the, look at these racist, privileged white Trumps, because they were wearing, remember, the kid was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. There were some Trump supporters among this group from Covington Catholic, which is a prep school in Kentucky. These are high school kids. They're young kids. And they just ran with all these stories about them. And Reza Aslan, who is among the more odious people to have ever been employed by CNN, I mean, which is saying a lot. He was the one who very notoriously tweeted out, "Have you ever seen a more punchable face?" Reza Aslan is a disgusting human being, by the way. Have you ever seen a more punchable face? And there are others like this. He's also one that called the president a piece of blank, publicly. That's who CNN gives shows to, by the way. CNN he had his own show at CNN on their air. That's who they hired. Just make no mistake about it. I mean, look at the people that CNN likes to elevate. Reza Aslan, Elliot Spitzer, a disgrace of a human being. Ugh. Elliot Spitzer is like only slightly less disgusting than like Anthony Weiner. I mean, Elliot Spitzer is gross. Gave him a show. I mean, this is who they give shows to over there. It's really, isn't it interesting when you look at it? And here you have CNN having to finally pay up for its ideologically motivated malfeasance. CNN agreed Tuesday to settle a lawsuit with Covington Catholic student Nick Sandmann. We don't know what the settlement amount was. That's usually part of it in these things. Sandmann sought $800 million from CNN, The Washington Post, and NBC Universal. And we still don't know what's going to happen, or what the outcome, I should say, is of the Washington Post and NBC Universal suits are. But CNN had to pay up. That much is for sure. This kid probably got, well into the seven figures. I don't know, which he totally deserves. Because CNN's very, very powerful. These media organizations have the ability to ruin people's lives, and they are reckless with it. CNN will show up and humiliate you on the front lawn of your own home if you're a private citizen who just wanted to get people together to support Trump, but you shared a Russian created meme on Facebook. Then you're a target. Ooh, because you're a Trump supporter. If you're a Trump supporter, it's fair game. If you're a lib, especially if you're a lib who's like a minority or part of some protected class, whoa, CNN's. Not only are they not going to say anything that's mean about you, they're going to go to the mat to protect you. And that's what their audience expects. If you're a private citizen who makes a meme that mocks CNN that they don't like, they'll dox you, they'll out you, and then they will threaten you unless you do what they say. It's a bad organization with a lot of very bad people who work there and who run it. Not everybody, but people calling the shots there, bad. And I'm glad that they had to pay up here. I, though, do not think that there will really be justice until essentially the entire senior leadership of CNN is fired and there's a complete revamp. I mean, a total redo of the ethical and professional standards of that organization, such that it really makes a good faith effort to be fair and be a news organization again, because that's not what it is at all. They have to pay this money to Nick Sandmann. I remember when the initial stories broke on this one, and I remember that I was like, it just seemed off to me. It just seemed off to me, the whole thing. That it was just too perfect. You get this photo of this kid, a Trump hat, staring at this, Native American activist. The guy's a loon, by the way. And then you get all these other members of the Black Hebrew Israelites or whatever they're called. And by the way, two people associated with that group killed a bunch of Jews in Jersey City recently in an anti-Semitic attack. I mean, so, that's domestic terrorism, but, you won't hear much about that from the media. But I have to note that you think about the major national news stories that have been completely wrong, right? I mean, if I sit here and I try to tell you about national news stories that were just false premises, that the media had it totally wrong, and I ask you to rattle off the times that that's happened. And here, I'll just do this with you. Let's think of times when they just got it totally. They got Covington Catholic totally wrong. They got Jussie Smollett totally wrong. The Duke lacrosse case, totally wrong. UVA rape story in Rolling Stone, gang rape story, totally wrong. You go to everything they wrote about Kavanaugh, basically, totally wrong. What is they would argue that. The other ones, that's just a matter of fact now. We all know that. And I'm sure some of you are yelling out as you're listening or watching this, your own, there's additional stories to that. They got these things on the facts, unquestionably, categorically, catastrophically wrong. What's the connective tissue between all of these things? There was a narrative that appealed to the liberal sensibility, about bad, conservative, white, privileged males. They see this, the libs see this, including, by the way, a lot of very privileged white liberal males will see this, right? They see this opportunity and they run with it. They can't be objective. It's almost like they can't help themselves. I don't know how much, I can't gauge how much of this is a compulsion versus just, they are doing this cynically. They understand that they're probably going to be wrong about this. Do you have any similar ability to look at the other side? How many stories have been run, major national level news stories, that were very damaging to a liberal, to a left-wing, protected, favored individual or group or class or whatever. And it turns out it was all false. I can think of none. I mean, if you offered me a lot of money, I'd sit here and I'd say, I wish I could collect, but I got nothing. Nothing. And we're supposed to believe that that's all just good faith error. No, I haven't even gotten to like Russia, Trump collusion, all these other things. They just get wrong. They get it all wrong. They get it all wrong in the same direction. Why is that? Yeah, you could start telling me about confirmation bias, start telling me that there's just the echo chamber effect. Those things are all real and true, and that's a part of it. But, ultimately, we have an ideologically driven press that is engaged in a continuing and massive fraud. CNN being one of the worst examples of it, but there are many others. And so the fact that they have to write a big check here, or really I think probably their errors and omissions insurance, although I don't know how it'll work in this case if it was considered malicious, but usually these organizations have essentially an insurance company that comes in when there's this defamation or this kind of thing, and they'll pay out. But CNN deserves to get taken to the cleaners over this one. And I'm happy that young Sandmann's college education will be paid for. His first house will be paid for. His first couple of Maseratis will probably be paid for. And he deserves it because, remember, they tried to ruin his life. They tried to ruin his life. I mean, he would have been branded forever as that racist white Trump supporter who was just being disrespectful to the honorable Native American activist who was just trying to, go for a nice walk in the park. No, it turns out that there were adults cursing at children and harassing them because they were wearing, MAGA hats, and the media couldn't help themselves to pick sides right away. They pick sides all the time. They pick sides, and we always know what side they're going to pick. So, absolutely, no surprises there, my friends.
Speaker Pelosi is now sitting on the articles she claimed were so very urgent. She's delayed this indefinitely so that the architects of the failed House process can look for ways to reach over here into the Senate and dictate our process as well. Democrats have tried to insist that the Senate deviate from the unanimous bipartisan precedent set in the 1999 trial of President Clinton and write new rules for President Trump. They've tried to pre-commit the Senate to redoing House Democrats' slapdash work for them and pursuing avenues that Chairman Schiff himself didn't bother to pursue.
How is the media, I was going to say, how is the media not pouncing on this more? But we know because they're just activists and they're on Team Democrat. They're leftists, they're socialists, and that's just who they are. It's what they believe, it's what they think. There's no serious person could say that what Pelosi's done here is on the up and up, is straightforward, is ethical, is honest. No serious person believes these Democrats, Schiff, Pelosi, the others that did this whole thing in the House and are now doing the whole, we're not going to transmit. This is just gamesmanship. I mean, they're just playing games with the process. This is what Democrats do. You see, for people who are honorable, there's an understanding that there will be differences of opinion that occur in a political process, in a legal process. And so the reason you have the rules that you have is to create some guardrails, some structure, some framework, so that it doesn't just become, whoever has the votes, for example, gets to do absolutely anything that they want. Right? This is also why we have separation of powers. There have to be some understood processes in place, or else nothing ever gets done. Right? If one senator could just shut down the Senate, say, sorry, I don't like what's going on here, that would be a problem. So that's not part of the Senate rules. But for, Democrats, for example, you could see them saying, well, why can't one senator just shut the whole thing down? Why can't they pack the Supreme Court if they don't like the number of judges? There's no rule that they're not willing to change when it doesn't suit them. This is the maniacal childishness of the Democratic Party that is on display for us on a regular basis. And I'm sorry, but I have not forgotten yet Nancy Pelosi being prayerful. She was saddened that Trump was so terrible that he just forced her. She didn't want to do it, just forced her to impeach him. I mean, who believes it? Who listens to this and doesn't say, wow, Nancy Pelosi, that's rich. Come on, that's ridiculous. Who listens to this and doesn't think these people are such frauds? Frauds. I don't know. You can't even have a conversation with a rational Democrat these days because there's so few rational Democrats. At least Cocaine Mitch understands what he's up against, I think, with these left. Just play producer Mark, play clip 2, please.
House Democrats are treating impeachment like a political toy. Treating their own effort to remove our commander-in-chief like some frivolous game. These bizarre stunts do not serve our Constitution or our national security. They erode both. My Democratic colleagues should not plow away American unity in some bizarre intramural competition to see who dislikes the president more.
And that's really what this is. It's a show how much you hate Trump competition. That's what we have been offered up by these Democrats because they have to appeal to their base. Their base demands that there's an impeachment of Trump. Right? They demand that. There must be. Doesn't matter what the reason is. When was the last time you even heard anything about quid pro quo and Ukraine, any of this? Well, all of a sudden, it's not really that big a deal. Oh. Because the messaging campaign against Trump went from that to, oh my gosh, he's leading us into World War III with Iran, and this is going to be so terrible. And then today, when you look at this, you come back and you say, hold on a second, what exactly has been the outcome? And we've been talking about this obviously for much of the show. The outcome is that Trump is winning on this issue and is showing how foolhardy it was when the previous administration decided to bow and scrape and plead and beg to get some kind of deal with the Iranians. It's interesting to see how this will just continue to play out without even a bit of introspection from the Democrats about the damage that they are doing to the country in the process.